Good afternoon, Captain Justin DeLeon here. Today, we're gonna go over a video that I've been wanting to make for a long time, and that's Call for Fire, all right? The main reference for today is ADP 3-19, fires. One thing of note, what I wanna mention is that you guys can always look in my Patreon for my training materials and my training resources. I'm gonna post a lot of stuff there for Call for Fire specifically that's gonna be very helpful. And it's also a great way to support my channel and meet with me on month-to-month basis if you want. Just some great opportunities there, so I encourage you to check it out and see if there's something there for you. Okay, Call for Fire. We're gonna go over the basic Call for Fire mission, and that's a Call for Fire grid, okay? And the reason we're gonna go over that is because that's typically it's the fundamental mission, all right? And it builds competency in this area before we move on to other ones, which I'm gonna make videos on as well, like shift from a known point or Call for Fire polar, other types of missions, okay? But also, this is what we're typically evaluated on in the Army. This is how we're, validated that we can do this mission, all right? Whether you're at ROTC Advanced Camp or whether you're in the active duty Army and you're going to a Call for Fire trainer, this is typically how you see it done, all right? And so let's dive into this and let's explain what's going on. So in a Call for Fire mission, what's happening is that when in the Army, when we call for fires, when we call for indirect fires, whether we're asking for mortars or artillery to indirectly fire and hit an enemy target in front of us, all right, we always have to have an observer. So we have someone that is going to observe those rounds land to ensure that they're effective, okay? We never just typically fire, we don't ever fire indirect fires and just hope they're hitting. Okay, we have to have an observer. So in this scenario, that's you. You're the observer that is facilitating this Call for Fire, all right? And the way we're gonna do it is we're gonna call for fire on a grid location that we think the enemy is at, that we observe and we believe the enemy is at, all right? Now, we're not just gonna call for fire and say, hey, fire 10 rounds on that target to try to destroy them. There's things that come into play. Like we're basically gonna have to make an estimated guess of where the enemy is. So we could be slightly off. Also, you have got wind in there, you got elevation, you got other things that could affect this. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna call for fire and they're going to lay down one round, okay? And it's likely going to be a little bit off. We're gonna give them a correction. They'll lay one round. We maybe have to lay a few more until we get it on target, and then we can say, hey, fire for effect. And the artillery or the mortar system will then fire for effect to destroy that element. So that is essentially what we're going to walk through. And we're going to walk through the way that we do that, okay? So Call for Fire grid. So when we do this, what we typically are doing is we're sitting in an OP, an observation post. So right now, here we are, this blue triangle, which is the observation post symbol. We're sitting in an observation post on this map, okay? And kind of just explain to you, we got the north-seeking arrow here. We've got the 0-1 easting, the 0-2 easting moving there. From north to south, we've got the 1-0 northing, 1-1, 1-2, those grid lines. We've got some hilltops throughout. We've also got a river flowing through, and we've got two roads delineated in black right here. Okay, there's a bridge crossing the river, and then the road goes into this red area, which is a population center, which is a city. Okay, so what we have seen now, sitting in our observation post, is we've seen that the enemy has exited the town and is setting up a traffic control point on the road. Okay, now there's no civilians in the area, there's no friendly assets in the area, it's only that enemy dismounted infantry squad that is right there, okay? So we see this, and this is a target of opportunity. So we want to call for fire. We can't affect it. It looks like we're about, 1-2 kilometers away. So we're not going to be able to shoot, with our direct fire rounds. We're going to call for fire to try to destroy that element, okay? And the way we're going to do it is do a Call for Fire grid mission. Okay, so first of all, what we have to do is we're going to have a map in front of us with a protractor, okay? And this is where some map reading and land navigation skills are required. We have to be able to see the terrain on our map and then look in front of us to the environment and be able to see the terrain in both spots. Essentially, on my map, I can see there's a road intersection. Well, in the environment in front of me, I can see this road intersection. Okay, good. So I know where that is on my map. Okay, now I can see that the enemy is just west of that road intersection, and I can see that on my map as well. So I'm going to make my best estimate and say, this is a 1 kilometer grid square of 1,000 meters. I'm going to say that this is about let's say 100 meters west of that intersection. So I'm going to plot that intersection. And let's say that intersection is at 0180 or 0190, let's say. All right, so now I'm going to say, okay, my best guess is that the enemy location is at 80. It's west 100 meters. So again, this is at 90, so I'm going to guess it's west, so it's at 80. So I'm going to call this grid mission up, and I'm going to say, okay, I think this grid is going to be 0180, like I said, and then they're just above the 10 northing. All right, so let's say 10, and then just above that, I'm going to go with 05. Okay, so they're just above that. So again, I don't know for sure, but I'm making my best guess of where that enemy position is. Okay, so that's the grid that I'm going to use to call for fire. Okay, so let's get to the transmission. All right, for this, I'm going to be we are going to be Hawk 6. Okay, and the Fire Direction Control Center, who's functioning and doing this call for fire mission, they're going to be Hawk 17. Okay, all right, so I'm going to call it up. So I'm going to be like, hey, Hawk 17, this is Hawk 6, adjust fire grid, over. So right away, I'm telling them that I'm going to adjust fire, and it's a grid mission, okay? And the reason why I say that adjust fire grid is because, again, I'm not saying fire for effect, I'm saying adjust fire. That means I want you to lay one round down range, all right? Fire it down range, and then we'll adjust from there, okay? So they're going to acknowledge me and return and say, Hawk 6, this is Hawk 17, adjust fire grid out. All right, and now it's time for me to give them the grid. Grid is 0180-1005, over. And they're going to say, Roger, grid 0180-1005 out. And then I'm going to give the description. Infantry squad in the open, over. They return. Infantry squad in the open, out. Okay, so now that they're processing it, okay, now sometimes it takes a little time. I'm just sitting there observing, ensuring that the situation doesn't change. And now they're going to call me up on the net, and they're going to say, hey, Hawk 6, this is Hawk 17, one round HE, target Alpha Bravo 001, over. Okay, so they just told me, hey, they're going to lay down a high explosive target, only one. They gave me what the target is, a high explosive round, only one, and they gave me a target number. So they've named the target now is Alpha Bravo 001. So I'm going to say it back to them and acknowledge. One round HE, target Alpha Bravo 001 out. Okay, now at this time, all right, this is also when I typically like to give direction. All right, there's different moments when you can give the direction that you are to that enemy position. This is when I like to, all right? And the reason why you need to is, so for us, we're almost directly south. We're probably, let's say it's like 2 degrees, okay? Hey, distance, so I'll call them up. Hawk 17, this is Hawk 6, direction, 2 degrees, over. And then they'll say, hey, Roger, Hawk 6, this is Hawk 17, direction, 2 degrees out. And so now we've acknowledged what direction I am to the enemy. So why is that important? Why do they need to know the direction from my position to the enemy? Because I'm going to be giving them adjustments, but I'm going to be giving them adjustments from my angle. Okay? Now, my guns might be over here somewhere. Let's say the guns are over here shooting. Okay? If I give them adjustments from my angle, saying left, right, add, drop, and they do it from their position, it's going to be different. Right? So they need to understand my angle in which I'm looking so they can know which way is left and which way is right in order to adjust the fire and get it correctly. All right? I hope that makes sense. So we got to give them the direction. Okay. Now they're processing, and now they're going to tell us when the round is on the way. All right? So they're going to call us up. They're going to be like, hey, Hawk 6 is Hawk 17, shot over. All right? We'll return with shot out. So when they say shot over, it's saying the round has left the tube. The round is on the way. And we acknowledge it by saying shot out. The round is on the way. Okay. And then typically, there's different ways to do this, but typically a few seconds before the round is going to land, they will say splash over. So, hey, Hawk 6, Hawk 17, splash over. And we will be standing by, and that means, hey, get your binos up and start looking at the target because you're about to see the round impact. All right, so we say back, splash out. All right, when we see the round when we see the round hit the ground, then we say splash out. All right, and now the Fire Control Center knows that we've seen the target hit the ground, and they are awaiting now for an adjustment. So we now need to do our work, get the correct adjustment squared away quickly so we can start adjusting rounds. Okay, so the round has landed. All right, so let's say for this, the round landed right here. All right, that's where the round landed. So you can see it missed the target a little bit, which is to be expected. We got to make some adjustments. And you can see what we got to do here is we've got to make an adjustment to the right, and we've got to make adjustment down a little bit as well. All right, so we got to move to the right and down a little bit. Okay, so let's talk about how we do that and how we identify what the adjustment is. We don't just guess and say, hey, go right 100 meters, go down 100 meters. We have a system for how we do this, okay? So first of all, let's talk about how we do it from right to left. All right, because you got to go right to left, and you got to do add drop. So right to left, the way we do it is by using our binos, okay? So specifically, we're looking at through our M45 binos that you'll have if you're on an OP, and you're going to put the target there, which I've drawn already, in the very center of the reticle, okay? Now, what I can do is I can see where the round actually landed. And like I said, it landed essentially, we're going to say it landed right here. I will say right here. Okay, so the round landed right there. So now we know we got to make an adjustment. We got to adjust to the right, and we got to adjust down or drop, okay? So one thing to note, though, is there's a couple things that play into effect here, all right? Now, these are all 1 zeros. Left to right is 1 0. So what I mean by that is we're going to go, you're going to give them the adjustment of, hey, 1 0 right. So they know that, hey, we have to adjust 1 0. 2 0, 3 0, 4 0. I think the real one goes out to 6 or 8. But the point is you get it, okay? That's how you tell them the adjustment. Now, there's something specific here, though, that you got to keep in mind, all right? And this is the challenging part where people get mixed up and get a little bit confused, but this is an important part, and it makes sense, and I'll try and explain it why. There's something that we have to do when we're moving around to the right or to the left. Like here, we're going to move it right, okay? We got to take into account what's called the OT factor. The OT factor, which stands for observer to target factor. Observer to target factor. The OT factor takes in account how far away you are from the target, okay? Meaning, the point is that the correction is going to have to be greater the farther away you are from the target. Because the further you are away, all right, the further the angle, the larger the angle will be. And let's talk about this here in a second. So essentially we can see right now, here's a grid line, grid line, grid line. We're about 2 kilometers away, 2,000 meters. Okay? So my point is, let's look at it this way. Okay? So we see, we're right here. We're right here. Our OP is right here. Okay? Now, the arrow points to where we believe the enemy is. Okay? Now, if the round landed here, okay, and the enemy is only, let's say, 100 meters away, okay, and the reticle says a 1, you can see that we just have to do that. It's not a very big adjustment, okay? But the point is, if we look at it up here, and it's 1,000 meters away, you can see that the angle stays the same. So we're going to still see it at the 1, because the angle stays the same, but we need a larger adjustment because it's further away. So basically, the further it is away, we're going to have to account for something because the adjustment just won't be the same as if you adjust it from here and just moved it this much. You're only going to adjust around that much, and you're going to keep missing. And it's going to take a long time. Okay? So we use what's called the OT factor to correct this. And what the OT factor does is it gives you a multiplier. So it gives you basically, hey, you're this far away, you need to multiply this number by the OT factor. All right, so let's talk about this. So the OT factor typically, all right, it gets kind of weird, but once you get, the OT factor, OTF is 1, all right, for 1,000 meters. Okay, so we'll just kind of start there. So it's 1 for 1,000 meters, all right? And then we begin to round to that nearest whole number, okay? So once we get to, let's say, a 1.6, the OT factor, sorry. Let me correct this. Once we get to 1,600 meters, all right, we're going to round up to 2. And so forth, all right? Same thing here. If it's 2,000 meters away, our OT factor is going to be 2. All right, if it was 3,000 meters away, our OT factor is going to be 3. If it was 3,700, you guessed it, it's going to be a 4. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use this number here, okay? And again, you'll typically, if you're doing this in training, they're going to give you this to work by. Sometimes it's a little bit different, based on how some people like to do it, but this is essentially what it's going to be doing. What it's going to look like according to the manual, okay? But let's say for us now, we can see, hey, we're right here at this grid line. We're roughly 2,000 meters away. So we know that our OT factor for this mission is going to be a 2. So everything that we see on this reticle from left to right, we multiply by 2, okay? So we can see we're left of the target 1, 0. All right, again, these are 1 zeros. And so we're going to multiply that by 2. So what do we get? We get a 2, 0. All right, so our adjustment to the right is going to be 2, 0. So when we read this adjustment, all right, we're going to say right 2, 0. Make sense? Okay, again, let's just cover it one more time. If it was over here, let's say if it was over here. Let's say the round had landed right here, okay? We would say left 4, 0, all right? Because we would have a 2, 0 here and multiply it by the 2. Left 4, 0. And that would have been the adjustment, okay? And again, the OT factor can change. If we were closer, let's say we were at this grid line, okay? We'd only be 1K away, 1,000 meters away. Our OT factor would just be 1. So it would basically be what the reticle reads us. If we were further away, we might have to multiply by 3 or 4 or even more. Okay? But that's essentially how you use the OT factor to correct for this angle differentiation that you'll experience. All right? Clear as mud, right? Okay. So now we've discovered what our correction needs to be to the right and to the left. So now let's talk about how we get it up and down. So what I want to talk about, let's get the up and down out of my language. I keep saying that. We use the words add and drop. So if we're going to add, we're going to move up. So this is add. If we're going to drop, we're going to go down. Okay, so add and drop are the words that we use. Okay, so let's talk about how we're going to do that. All right, OT factor complete. And the way we're going to do this is by called successive bracketing. Now, there are different ways to do this. There are a lot of different ways to do this, but we're going to talk about this specific way because this is what we typically do when we're testing, all right? We make sure that someone can do successive bracketing. It is the most basic. It does take a little bit longer, but it is a mathematical certainty that the round will land on target, all right? So that's what we like to teach. So successive bracketing is how we do this, all right? All right, successive bracketing. And so what this means is we are now going to bracket onto the target, meaning we're going to shoot one round over, then we're going to shoot one round under, over, under until it hits right on the target. All right, and then that's basically how we're going to continue to adjust this. Okay, so what we're going to do is we fired over the target. Let's erase this one here. So we fired above the target, so we need to drop the round. Okay, for this, if we're doing successive bracketing, we're not going to pay attention to the reticle. All right, that's if we a little more advanced. We don't pay attention to the reticle. We just say automatically we see that we need to drop. And you know what we do? We always drop 400 meters. Drop 400. So the point is that if let's say the target is here. Let me draw the target real fast. And my round hits here the first time, I'm now going to drop it 400 meters. And it's going to land there. Now I'm going to, the second time, I'm going to add 200 meters. So the second one is always 200 meters. So it always goes 400, then 200, then 100, and then 50 fire for effect. So that's how we're going to go. So we're going to go drop 400, and then we're going to add 200. All right, and then it's going to go there. Then we're going to drop 100, okay? The round lands right here, almost on target. Last one, add 50, fire for effect, boom. And they land all the rounds on there. So essentially, you bracket it in and hit the target, all right? That's the easiest way to do it, all right? And it is a mathematical certainty that you will hit the target every time, okay? It always works. So you go 400, 200, 100, 50 fire for effect, and you will hit it. So let's go over what this looks like, all right? So let's talk through the transmission. All right, so we're going to give them our correction. Hawk 17, this is Hawk 6. Right 20, drop 400, over. They're going to respond back. Hawk 6, this is Hawk 17. Right 20, drop 400, out. Now, if there's a correction, we need to say it right away. So if they read something incorrectly, let's say they said right 30, we immediately will say correction, right 20, and we'll inflect our voice. Right 20, drop 400, all right? And now they have the correct thing, and we say, hey, roger, over. Now we're just waiting for them to shoot another round. And they're going to say, shot over, and we'll say, shot out. And then they'll say, splash over, and we'll get our binos up, and we'll wait for that round to hit, and when it hits, we'll say, splash out, okay? So now let's say the round is going to impact again. This time, the round impacts and is just a little bit underneath the target, okay? But it's online now, all right? It's perfectly online. So it's like right here, let's say. So we see this now, and we notice we don't need to make any right or left adjustments. So we don't have to do the right by the OT factor anymore, okay? And typically, right to left, it gets corrected easier, all right? It almost gets on right away. You might have a small correction again, but typically it's right on, because that, especially if your OT factor is correctly multiplied and it's done well. So we're done with our right to left adjustments, but we can see now we're underneath the target. So just like we did here, okay, that first one, we dropped at 400. So now what do we need to do? We need to add. And what do we go to? We did the 400. So what do we need to do next? We add the 200. Okay? So now we're going to add the 200 and see what happens. Okay. So we're going to give it. We're going to say Hawk 17, this is Hawk 6, add 200, over. And they say Hawk 6, this is Hawk 17, add 200, out. So now they know, because I didn't say any right or left, they're online. And now we're just trying to bracket it in. So we're going to add 200, and they're going to say shot over, and we'll say shot out. And then we getting ready, they'll say splash over. We get our binos up, and we see the round impact, splash out. Okay? Again, this now, it's getting really close. And it landed just above the target. All right, say right here. I'm going to use a blue now to delineate it. It just landed just above the target. So it landed here last time, but it was actually right on line. And now it's right here. Okay? So we added 200. This is a 400. This is a 200. So now what do we need to do? All right, we did the 200. What's next? It's just above the target, so we need to drop it. So we're going to drop 100. That's the next correction. All right, so, hey, Hawk 17, this is Hawk 6. drop 100, over. And they're going to say, Hawk 6, this is Hawk 17, drop 100, out. All right, we're standing by. They say shot, over. And then we say shot out, acknowledging the round is at the tube. And then they say splash, over. We get our binos up, splash out when we see the round hit. And the round, the round hit just barely below the target. I mean, just barely. So the round hit just barely below the target. And the point is that if you're within 50 meters, you can go ahead and fire for effect. So at this time, you could say fire for effect, but typically what we do is we say 50 meters, we add 50 meters, fire for effect. All right, so essentially it's going to hit right on here and it's going to destroy it. So the last one, the last correction that we did, we did the 100, and it landed right here. The last one we're going to do is that 50, fire for effect. All right, hopefully you can see through all that jumbled mess. But so our last transmission, here we go. Hawk 17, this is Hawk 6, add 50, fire for effect. And they say, Roger, Hawk 6, this is Hawk 17, add 50, fire for effect. So basically they're going to add that 50 meters and then they're going to rain down. And typically you're going to see anywhere between 6 to 10 rounds, depending on the target. All right, so we're going to watch and we're going to observe that target now. And again, we're going to see all this, artillery fire or mortar fire rain down, and we're going to observe and assess BDA now. Okay, so now that we've walked the round on target, they're going to fire for effect to try and destroy that target, and we've got to do BDA, which is a battle damage assessment. Essentially, we're trying to kill all those people. All right, we're trying to destroy that element, ensure that it's combat ineffective. So if they were all destroyed, then we're going to call that up. All right, and it's going to be end of mission transmission, and it's going to sound like this. Hawk 6 is Hawk 17. Hawk 17, this is Hawk 6. End of mission. 1 infantry squad destroyed. Over. And they'll repeat it back to you, essentially acknowledging it. Hawk 6, this is Hawk 17. End of mission. 1 infantry squad destroyed. Out. And the fire mission is complete. They're destroyed. However, what do you do if they're not destroyed? Let's say there's 3, you can see 3 figures still moving around, crawling around or whatever, and you want to destroy them again. This is where you lay on the Hawk 17, this is Hawk 6, repeat, over. And now they say Hawk 6, Hawk 17, repeat out. And then they're going to get the shot over, splash over. So repeat means repeat the mission. Fire it again. And a lot of times you're going to do that because you might not always kill everyone or destroy that entire element within the first mission. Okay? And this is why, if you go back to my radio mission, my radio communication or operations class, you never say repeat on the radio unless you're in this position and unless you're doing a call for fire mission. All right? It means repeat the fire's mission. All right? And then once they're all done, you say, hey, Hawk 17, this is Hawk 6, end of mission, 1 infantry squad destroyed, over. And they read it back to you. Hawk 6, this is Hawk 17, end of mission, 1 infantry squad destroyed, out. All right? And it's complete. Okay? Okay, hey, I hope this was helpful. Call for fire is kind of a difficult one to teach, and it's kind of difficult to understand. Again, the biggest things that you could look up in 3-19 are understanding the OT factor and understanding the bracketing, the successive bracketing, okay? But the point is you got to use that OT factor, all right? And typically they give you a sheet, so you can look at it and say, hey, I can see I'm 2 kilometers away from the enemy, okay? What does that equal on the OT sheet? And it's going to typically be that 1,000 meters to 1 ratio. So for every 1,000 meters, it's going to be an OT factor, and you typically round up to the nearest 1,000 meters. So just like we kind of talked about earlier, all right. And successive bracketing, again, you always, whether you're adding or dropping, you always start at 400 and work your way down, all right. 400, 200, 150, fire for effect, all right. You always follow that. Typically where you see people screw up or potentially fail is they'll do 400 twice, or they'll try not to do successive bracketing. They'll try and cheat the system. Hey, other ways of doing it, there are other ways of doing it, but you need an advanced person at that OP to do it. If you try to guess and say, hey, I think I'm 200 away, you're going to screw it up. Okay? Trust me, I'm telling you, it's easy to mess up. If you use successive bracketing, go 4, then 2, then 1, then 50, it will always work out. You will see. It will always work out. So it's a mathematical certainty going that way. All right? So, hey, I challenge you to check this out. I challenge you to try it out. Again, There's a lot of different ways to do call for fire, but this is that fundamental way. And if you can get this down and understand it, then you're going to be leagues ahead of your peers, and you're going to be set up to do these other missions. Again, like I've said, shift from a known point or polar. Okay, but this is the fundamental way to do it. And again, I hope this gave some clarity and was helpful and will help you gain some understanding. All right, I'm Captain Justin DeLeon, and Rangers lead the way.